So, I'm not sure if I'm actually recording it. Well, I assume that I am. This is the problem with using new software. You don't necessarily know what you're doing. And am supposedly an audio and video technician. But generally, how it works is every time you use some new software, there's a learning curve. And it makes you completely aware of the fact that you're just a grandpa instead of an audio and video tech. So, what I want to talk about is things like pot and politics and pot and politics, pretty much. I like talking about space too, and science. And I also like talking about how the hell am I going to get this glare off of my glasses? That's the problem with having a screen in front of you all the time so that you can, see what you're doing online or whatever, is that when you tilt your glasses just like so, you know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden you got glare. There we go. I can use it like a pirate patch. There we go. Anyway, first of all, I would like to talk about Jason frickin' Kenney. Oh man, am I ever annoyed by that guy? I was annoyed by him before he ever did anything to fuck me over. But he did it. That guy has totally made my life into a fucking miserable fucking ruin. And he's done it to thousands and thousands of other Albertans too. In fact, perhaps millions. The thing is that the guy was a total scumbag right from word go. All his everything he does is just to bring power and control to himself. He's a totally self-serving megalomaniac as far as I'm concerned. He's a little bit better spoken than Trump, but I think he's pretty much in the same fucking camp. At least one thing that he did right was he kind of got COVID, but not really. Like, he's better at Trump than at dealing with COVID, but he still messed up really bad. He still had all of those stupid tendencies that most of the right-wing assholes have, and fucked up on COVID. And so now he's the least popular premier of all time. I've heard approval ratings ranging between 20 and 8%. And much of the stuff that I've been hearing lately really suggests that the 8% is the figure that's more correct. Nobody likes him. It's like, I don't run into anyone who has anything positive to say about the guy. In fact, I've noticed that even with my big hate on for him, I seem to be the guy who actually does have the most positive things to say about him, because I don't know, I guess I'm trying to, give you have balanced view in my head about him. Like, I truly do believe that not everybody is totally evil. But, sometimes guys like him come along and just make you go, oh, gee, he's a scumbag from asshole to breakfast. I really can't stand him. So here's what he did to me. I'm on a funding program called Barriers from Employment. It kind of really sucks. It's not really much better than regular welfare. It's like, oh, you're disabled, but we don't give a fuck, so we'll just kind of, not care and give you enough money. Well, not give you enough money, too. Now, I was getting around $1,280, $1,270 thereabouts a month. And when I rented my place here 3 years ago, it was based on that amount of money. I'm paying $6.95, or just about $7. So the thing is, Kenny, after he gets elected, he decides that everybody on Barriers from Employment don't deserve the extra funding for stable housing. And he cuts all that money off. And then he cut off the money that I was getting for Heart Healthy Diet, and the money I was getting for little bit of money I was getting for Gluten Healthy Diet. And he cut out the money that I was getting for a bus pass. Well, that brought my income down to $912 a month. Well, that only leaves me a little bit over. That only leaves me with about 200 and some, $217. So my bank fees eat up 17 or thereabouts, so that only leaves me with about $200 to survive on in a month. Well, after I'm done paying for my power and my internet and my credit card payment, I have no money left. I can't afford to get a bus pass anymore. I can't afford to buy food anymore. I cannot afford to supply myself with marijuana. Like I have no budget for that either. Now, my neurologists and my doctor, they think I should be smoking 4 grams of marijuana a day, which is a little bit more than I think I do, because I have no frickin' money. So basically, I am stuck with what little I can grow in a tiny little window, which really doesn't cover my needs, at all. I'm stealing rides on the train to go downtown to feed myself. There's some sources of free food down there that I take advantage of. Otherwise, I'd starve. And stealing rides on the train isn't very good, because I've already been caught once and got a $175 ticket, which I couldn't afford to pay even if I wanted to. I'm lucky because I know how to sidestep all civil jurisdiction offers and the bylaw infraction, which is riding on the train without a ticket. Well, that's one of those civil jurisdiction things, which is consensual. Consensus facit legum is the old maxim in in the law. I'm not sure how good my Latin is, but yeah. So I can sidestep that one. Lucky for me. Uh, but most people in my situation, if they're nailed with that ticket, they'd be stuck paying it. Um, and for me to sidestep it, it's a hassle. Like I got to go and do stuff. Um, yeah, and when you're a grandpa, you just don't feel like doing stuff. And with me having epilepsy, I really don't like being in conflict or controversy with anyone anymore, because all that stress and bullshit can aggravate my epilepsy and give me seizures and potentially give me heart attacks. I've already had 3 heart attacks. Blah blah blah. I don't need the stress. And that's another reason why I don't like Jason Kenney, because I don't need the stress of having my all everything in my life disturbed. Like right now at this point in time, anytime I need anything extra, it goes on my credit. Um, some months my uh, well, many months actually, most months, I end up spending more money on my credit card than I have money to pay on my credit card. So it's slowly going up, which means that the interest that I pay is slowly going up. Eventually, I'm going to have to stop putting money on my card altogether, because the interest is going to pile up enough that it's going to kill me. Like I'll be in a downward spiral. I kind of already am. And when you phone the people at what they call Alberta Works, which is the new name for the welfare department, they are, well, they've been instructed to be cold and a bunch of assholes or something, because really their attitude has changed since the previous government, which was led by the New Democrats under Rachel Notley. So yeah, it's affected me deeply, and it's affected other people. Plus, the guy is fucking up with everything. Like, he's alienated the doctors, and a lot of them are starting to move out of Alberta. Oh, wow. I'm just noticing out the window right now, seems to be the first snow of the year. Which is kind of disturbing, because it's now the 14th of November. First snow of the year, 14th of November? This is fucking Edmonton. This is not down in the States or someplace. This is... When I was a kid, my birthday, October 12th, there was usually snow on the ground. Like... That's another reason I was greatly disturbed by Jason Kenney. There he is, pushing the oil patch all over the place, smearing the planet up with oil, dirtying up the atmosphere for the sake of a handful of fucking billionaires. He's not interested in putting in a royalty or tax regime on the oil that's even close to what Alaska has, so Albertans don't get as much out of that oil as they should. It's like if we had received royalties at the same rate as Alaska had, or even the same rate as Norway had, Alberta could have had a a fund stuck away, rivaling or even better than the one that Norway has. They got over $1 trillion stuck away, collecting interest, feeding the public coffers in Norway. Like how wouldn't that be nice? Gee, billions of dollars every year in interest just to throw into public revenue. Like, if you really wanted to, like, honestly, all of that oil could have created a fund that actually pulled us in more money than the oil. It sounds weird, but it's true. Over the years, we could have stuck enough away in oil royalties that it ended up earning us more in a year than the oil ever could. But no, those dumbasses, they don't think about things like the future of the provinces or the good of the people or anything. What they were thinking about was shareholder profit, sticking a bunch of money into the hands of oil corporations and oil investors and shareholders and stuff. That's really all they care about, is kissing the butts of the elites that control them and back their financial campaigns, or give them cushy positions on boards of directors or whatever after they retire as politicians. That's all they really care about. Kissing the butts of the billionaires, basically, so that they can be rewarded. It's all about corruption. It's all about scumbaggery. And that's true just about everywhere you go. Look at what once used to be a highly flawed, but yet socialist country, the USSR. They, it was lots wrong with that place, but kind of wasn't a very nice place to live in some ways, like just because of the government oppression and bullshit, and all kinds of Stalinist purges and genocide and whatever the hell. But they still had a socialist bent to them, which kind of made it so that, how shall I say, everybody starved equally, so to speak. Yeah, there was an elite over there and everything. There always is. But the thing is, they did have pretty good access to things like, your basics for food and education. Yeah, that was one thing where they really excelled in. Everybody got some education. Everybody got a job, even though everybody had a job, didn't even necessarily mean they were all that productive. Though there was that thing, Russia is workers' paradise. Nobody works, but they still looked after their people pretty decent. But all of a sudden, even some of them, they repressed, but the largest number of them they still looked after. Now, it's kind of hard to tell whether or not the people are any better off, because a lot of them are starving because of capitalism. A lot of the public things that used to be public, like the utilities and stuff, A lot of that's been grabbed up of these kleptocrats who are mainly ex-government and ex-KGB and stuff like that, that they managed to seize control of huge amounts of government assets. I'm still kind of confused as to how that ever happened, but I guess that was what happens when a corrupt bunch of kleptocrats take over your government. And it, similarly, we experienced that here in Alberta when a bunch of kleptocrats took over under the progressive conservatives like Klein and whatnot, and they privatized things like Alberta Power and Alberta Government Telephones and Edmonton Power and Edmonton Telephones. So all of a sudden, these utility systems, which had been owned by the people, all of a sudden were sold off for at fire sale, rates for really not anywhere near what they were worth, and and we lost those sources of revenue forever. Like, that's the thing. Alberta Government Telephones, Alberta Power, Edmonton Power, and Edmonton Telephones all created money that was able to subsidize the general revenues of both the province and the city of Edmonton. It could have kept doing that forever. You know what I'm saying? But no, they sold it off, and their excuse was, well, we'll take this tiny little handful of money right now, and we'll lose everything, all the income forever that thing could have, Basically, it was kleptocracy. Kleptocracy, just in case you don't know, means rule by theft. It's similar to plutocracy, which is ruled by the rich, and oligarchy, which is ruled by an elite of a small number of, insider dudes. So basically, they have an oligarchic plutocratic kleptocracy going just about every time these ultra right-wing neo-fascist robber baron types take control. It happened here in Alberta, it happened over in Russia with Putin and whatnot, and under the influence of the billionaires and the kleptocrats, the Russians, the international financier types, your Murdochs and whatnot, Koch brothers, the list goes on and on. Those types are basically interested in pilfering the wealth of the public and sticking it all into their pockets and repressing the people, taking their wealth away, depowering them. It's like there's a huge anti-democratic movement happening all over the earth. If you look at their tactics and their strategies, they're into this thing called confuse and conquer, or confuse and divide. It's like divide and conquer. It's kind of like a confuse, divide, and conquer. But basically, you confuse and divide people. And I think we are beginning to, the public is starting to catch on to that over here. you confuse and divide people by the way that Putin does it is he goes and he invests resources into all sides, amazingly enough, even his own opposition. Okay, and he spreads lies in all forums. Okay, and he especially accuses his enemies of doing what he's doing himself. Okay, so that the thing gets normalized, okay, in advance before he even does it. People become I don't know, desensitized to the bullshit. Now take a look at what's happened with Trump. Like, holy crap, has he ever done exactly what I'm talking about that Putin started with? Okay, like all this stuff where they're trying to say to you that there's no Russia connection or all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, there sure as fuck is. You know, if you think the Russians have gotten out of the spy and espionage and you know, the international influence game, then you're dumb. They are definitely still in that game. Okay, in fact, they're some of the very best players at that game. And, you know, so's the U.S. and Israel and UK and different others too. But the thing is, they are seriously good at it. In fact, I often think that the Russians might have the #1 intelligence service in the world. Just because of their sheer balls. You know, like they're more, yeah, proactive and ballsy, it seems, than just about anybody. But anyway, there's this confuse and divide thing going on, and unfortunately, it's really worked well with anybody who is remotely attached to the right wing in the U.S. It's like it baffled at least some of them for a few moments. You know, the old thing, you can't fool all the chickens all the time, but you can fool some of the chickens all the time, or you can fool all of the chickens some of the time. You know, well, holy cow. Did Trump and Putin ever fool the chickens in the U.S.? Holy shit. I keep wondering, when are those dumb fucks gonna realize that they've been trolled like crazy? Because like with this whole Q thing, for instance, it's like, you know, that just keeps getting dumber by the second. It's like, you know, there's that old thing, that old saying that about you know, being you know, about how, oh shit, I forget exactly. Anyway, the idea is it's really hard to convince somebody that they've been fooled, right? I think it's a Samuel Clemens saying. Anyway, the thing is, the one I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's really frickin' hard to convince somebody that they've been fooled. It's easier to fool them than to convince them that they've been fooled. Like, once somebody starts believing in something, it's almost like they shut off their brains to other possibilities. I know all these people, different people. Like in my family, there's a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses and a bunch of other people I've run into. Different ones, Catholics and Mormons and just about any kind of a congregation you could mention. People are just so convinced by their own biases about the Bible that they're just so, it makes them unwilling to consider other possibilities. And the weird part about it is, you can show them another possibility straight out of their own Bible, and they still don't buy it. Or, you could show them, it's like, hey, here's a new idea for you. It's called gravity. And they don't get it because it's not in their book. So that's why I've decided that I've chosen to believe in as little as possible on a daily basis. I'm just going to take things as they come, and try to retain an open mind about everything as much as possible. There are a few things that I believe in, like, okay, I believe I exist. I believe that the physical universe around me that I perceive, that it's there, that I'm not just a brain in a jar or something, being force-fed images. I actually have taken that idea, the idea that there is a reality. I shouldn't say reality, that there is an existence outside of my brain that has something to do with what my senses are telling me. Okay, now beyond that, I believe in things like babies, and up and down, and hot and cold, and hungry and tired, and I've decided to believe in God, and I still believe in love, even though it seems to be a bunch of chemical reactions as much as anything. Yeah. Do I believe anything else? I believe my head's itchy. Not much. What's the point? What's the point in absolutely deciding that something is absolutely some way? Especially when life tends to come along and prove you wrong all the time. Now, here I am on to existentialism and philosophy and all that kind of crap. But the thing is that back to the politics. Now, how does pot tie into that? Well, generally, people don't tend to see through the bullshit, and they kind of caught up in their own fucking ideas way too much. And but anybody who smokes some pot, on a regular basis, they kind of don't really give a crap about that sort of shit. Speaking of pot, it's time for me to get some going. Woohoo! Marijuana. Grew it myself. Anyway. Yeah. Fuck, man. If I didn't grow my own weed, I wouldn't have any. Fuck. Good thing I know how to grow weed. So, anybody who has smoked pot and knows about pot, well, they know. Well, this stuff kind of opens up your mind a little bit, makes you wonder about the different possibilities. And it kind of makes it so you don't give a fuck about stuff you don't need to give a fuck about. You know? It's like, oh, I'm really upset about, you know, about how dirty my needle nose pliers are getting. Shit, damn. Well, let's see. I think I can fix it with some marijuana. Let's see. Let's see. Fuck, it's working. I don't give a shit anymore. You know what? Okay, so the marijuana is beautiful that way. Like, really. It'll make you go, do I need to give a fuck about that? No. Nope. No, I don't need to give a fuck about that. Oh, that just ended up on the garbage heap of things that of things that I'm going to avoid thinking about. You know? It's a beautiful way to approach life, is to just kind of give as few fucks as possible, and to believe in as few little things as possible. Like, why? Why get all upset about shit? Why, get all hung up about somebody else's fucking belief system? It's like, ugh. Oh, some guy wrote a book, and he said it came from God, huh? Oh, well, I got some Florida swampland, which is appreciating in value dramatically. As the old thing goes. So... No. If you find anything divine in those writings, well, cool. You know? But that's only going to be from your own perspective. You ain't going to be able to prove it to anybody else in any sort of absolute sense. The only way that they're going to take it on is if they decide to all of a sudden take this huge leap of faith and accept it all absolutely, which is from another perspective called being a huge sucker. Yeah, I've decided to believe in God. I have my own reasons for doing that. Well, it's kind of like this. There's been a few times when it really seemed like God had came through for me. So, hey, can't argue with success. You know? It's like, whoa, that seemed to work. I seem to actually get a response to my prayer. Well, maybe I should try doing that again. See how it goes. So, also, I have a subjective feeling that this God guy is kind of there and that he likes me. I don't know. And I prove that to you? No, not at all. The thing is, that's how I feel. Um, and there's very often that I'll look at the intricacy of nature and see things that just that seem to imply that it, you know, God's creation. I don't want to get into a lot of the arguments that I've heard about, these creation scientist kind of guys get into. Some of them. But I will say there is something to that idea of irreducible complexity when, as an argument, you see leaps in the design that are just where like for instance, okay, you get these single cell organisms and all of a sudden they have this flagellum thing so they can swim. Well, if that was just like part of the outside thing, it was just like a little wiggly that was kind of the same stuff as the outside cell membrane or whatever, you could kind of see it maybe, but it's not like that at all. it's like a really highly complex mechanism with several parts to it. Okay, it's like it all of a sudden went from having nothing to having something with like a bazillion little different little parts in it. It's like honestly, it's kind of almost as if it went from being a door without a doorknob to being a door with a doorknob all of a sudden on it. I mean, like a fully working doorknob mechanism with the latch and everything. All of those parts just sprang up out of fucking nothing. Well, that reminds me of that magic bullet theory, which also seems like complete bullshit. Well, what that says to me, that would say to me, is that either the information to do that already existed in the DNA somehow, the DNA and RNA, or that a new one was introduced. So how did the information get there in the first place? And if a new one was introduced, how the hell did that happen? I guess what I'm saying is that there's a hell of a pile that we still don't know, right? And an awful lot of the assumptions and theories that we're going under are so riddled with holes, it's ridiculous. Anybody who says that they know how life got here on Earth, I think is fucking lying. Anyone, any single one of them. I don't really give a shit what your specialty is. I think that you're fucking lying to yourself if you actually think that you know how life got here. Anything that, honestly, in some ways, deciding that evolution is how we got here is taking as big a leap of faith as deciding that it was some creator or God or something. Like, if I was forced to guess, I would say that natural selection and evolution do indeed happen, but that doesn't necessarily answer all of the questions as to how life got here. Because some of it implies design. Bottom line, still guessing. Why is that so hard to fucking... honestly, the still guessing option is the most obvious one. Yet it's the one that people seem to choose the least. They gotta jump to one absolute, well, not one absolute, one of the leading theories or another. What's wrong with saying that you don't know? Are you so insecure that you can't handle saying that, or you're so insecure that you can't handle, being so enlightened as to acknowledge your ignorance? Anyway. I really find it hard to believe that they still haven't arrested Trump. It's like, hasn't anybody down there got any balls? Like, what? You can't read through the fucking code and say, has he committed this one? Has he committed this one? Has he committed this one? Because if you do it that way, you just keep reading through all the codes and statutes, you're going to run into a whole bunch of fucking shit that he did. Right? All you had to do is pay attention, to what he was doing at all. I didn't do the greatest big job about that, but there's this really, really great website called What the Hell Happened Today, or What the Fuck Happened Today. Anyway, they got a really good day-by-day synopsis of all the shit that Trump did. And, of course, it's not all the shit Trump did. But if you just go through, what they have with a good knowledge of the code, I'm sure that you're going to start figuring out stuff that you could work on to charge Donald Trump with. So, seeing as how there's a whole bunch of Americans down there, and a whole bunch of them have interest in charging Donald Trump with stuff, why the fuck hasn't happened yet? Like, who the fuck are they waiting for? There's a lot of people who could do that. Like, for instance, remember when the post office charged Bannon? Well, okay, so the post office people, I'm pretty sure they don't like Trump, because he's trying to kill them off. That asshole that DeJoy or whatever the hell that he's stuck in charge of the post office. Well, that guy has shares and shit like UPS, I believe, and wants to kill the post office so that people use private delivery services. like the post office is unique amongst delivery services because it's actually protected by the Constitution of the U.S. Um, like that's one thing in the Constitution. The Constitution says that the government will operate the post office. You know, and at the time, it was considered to be an incredibly progressive and radical, you know, commie sort of thing. But if you look at it now, it's like, well, post offices are looked at as being sacrosanct in most of the world. The thing is that those guys in the post office, they got a cop service. They can go around enforcing U.S. law. Well, just throw a shitload of money at that. You know? Get them going out there. It was like back in the day when they needed a new federal service that could go around and fight these crime gangs. You know, like Capone and whatnot. And they made the FBI. Well, make another one. with the post office people. Because they fucking hate the fascists already. You know? Make a new civilian law enforcement agency if you have to. They've done it a bunch of times. You know, or security agency. It's like with the NSA. It's bigger than the CIA and the FBI put together. Nobody really kind of ever looks at it too much. And it's kind of like a civilian counter to the army in a way. I'm not so sure that I trust the NSA at all. They seem to be a bunch of scumbags too, but as much as anyone. I'm sure they do good things as well. But the thing is that they could be fighting fascism and could be nailing Trump and all of his people with far more zeal and gusto than they seem to be willing to do. I think the Democrats are such wimps, but everybody knows that. Well, we all know that Biden was the corporate choice, and if you would have listened to, like, if they hadn't all chose Biden there, you know, right around that Super Tuesday there, like if the media hadn't all gone in on Biden, and the campaign had progressed in more of an organic sort of way, we probably would have ended up with Bernie as the Sanders as the candidate. And I doubt that Sanders would be so fucking wimpy. I don't think that he would be as willing to kiss the corporate ass as Biden has been. I also suspect that the Democrats would have ended up in that election with better results had Sanders been the choice. Because Sanders had something over, like they're trying to say that what's his face, that Biden, he was better because he could get the centrist thing, but Sanders could steal just as much vote from Trump as anybody because he could do that populist change, rebel sort of shake up the system sort of thing that Trump could, and that appealed to people a lot, regardless of whether or not it came from the right or the left. Um, and I also suspect that the uh, that the momentum behind Sanders' campaign and the popular um, enthusiasm behind his campaign would have spilled off into other people's campaigns on the Democratic side a lot more than anything like that ever happened with Biden. Like, honestly, uh, what happened was that the media chose Biden, and then everybody else kind of fell in, and then we were all behind Biden, all the left, because, well, he's the lesser of the two evils, so to speak. And but Biden always had kind of a lackluster campaign, and Bernie's enthusiasm was stronger. Um, there were two things, in a way, that killed that huge campaign that Sanders had going. And the one I've already mentioned, the media's choice of Biden. And secondly, the COVID pandemic. All of a sudden, Sanders couldn't bring out as many. He couldn't bring all those people out to the rallies anymore. He couldn't continue on like Trump did, because Bernie is actually socially responsible. But yeah, it's possible that even with the media choosing Biden, that if there had been no pandemic to deal with, that just the sheer amount of popular support and volunteers and the on the ground army that could have worked the Sanders campaign, it kind of disappeared. And is the true strength of any Democratic campaign, is how many volunteers they have, how many people get out and actually work the election. The Republicans, their strength is corporate donations, but the Democrats, their strength is individual donations and even more than that, individual volunteerism. They really have a lot of bodies to work the election, which is pretty cool. Now, back to Alberta. We have a similar thing here with the New Democrats versus the United Conservative Party. The United Conservatives, they do have a fair number of bodies, but they don't have the same numbers, I don't think, as the NDP has, willing to help them. Plus, ever since Kenny fucked up as bad as he did and pissed off everybody in Alberta, and I haven't even gotten into I've only touched on a couple of the ways that he's done that. Like, he really has. Well, he's fucked up so bad that it's quite amusing, except for the fact that I can barely afford to live where I do. Well, I can't, really. I am in the process of finding a cheaper place to live. I haven't gotten into my problems with my landlord here, but they're pretty bad. I think my landlord is a scumbag who's and that they're behaving criminally towards me. And that any day that I don't file an information behalf on Her Majesty the Queen with the Justice of the Peace, thereby charging them with their criminal offenses, is another day that I'm being nice to them and that they're lucky. Well, and then finally, I think I'm going to end this thing now. And I'm going to end it with by bragging, I guess. Well, I suppose it's maybe not bragging, it's just the truth. I apparently have this really high IQ, and I'm not sure that I've really used it to achieve success in the ways that most people would define success, but in my own life, I think I've applied it not too badly. My IQ, when expressed in terms of percentile, is 99.64%. Well, that makes it so that only one that the rarity of having that IQ is 1 out of 278. Now, what does that mean? Well, in practical terms, what that means is that I'm used to being the smartest guy in the room. Nearly every room I've walked into my entire life. The odds of me actually running into somebody with a higher IQ than me in any particular room that I walk into are actually fairly low. Now, that also means that I'm used to not being recognized as the smartest guy in the room in nearly every room I walk into my entire life. Yeah, so I very often am sitting there going, "Oh, Jesus, dumbass, would you hurry up and get to the point?" Because I already know what it is. You're wasting both of our time right now. But I don't say that. I'm sitting there, smiling and being polite and waiting for them to say what they want to say so that I don't have to insult them. I'm not the greatest at math. I can do it. But, yeah. Some of it I get, okay? Some of it I can do in my head. But mainly I gotta sit down there with pen and paper and fucking do it. Yeah. I'm not the best at math. But when it comes to things like law or philosophy or just sheer logic games or stuff like that, yeah, I kick butt in that kind of stuff. Now, for those of you who don't know, I became the Alberta Marijuana Party Leader back in 2000. I did step down for 2 years, and a fellow by the name of Dave Dowling took over. And then when he stepped down, I took over as the Marijuana Party Leader again. So I've been the Marijuana Party Leader now for nearly 20 years. In the last few years, like since, 2019, 2020, and this last year, the Marijuana Party is nearly completely inactive here in Alberta. There's only really two people who ever really do anything with it that I know of. Now that may change, but we did at one point in time have a store and 7,800 members, and we're kind of a thing, and got a lot of attention and that from the different media outlets here in Alberta. I did figure out how to beat the pot laws one law at a time, like one case at a time, I should say. I was teaching people how to do that. Unfortunately, the method that we found had no chance of ever setting a precedent, which is what you really wanted to do if you wanted to squeeze those laws out of existence. But we did manage to get a fair number of people off of marijuana charges anyway, including myself. We also, in one of our constitutional challenges, managed to pass on information to other people that help them to succeed in their constitutional challenges. We didn't actually win ours, but we came so close that we were able to, and even the judge in this one, he told us that we'd only done one thing wrong, otherwise he would have overturned the marijuana laws. And he even told us what that one thing was. He said that we hadn't proven that Parliament had been negligent in passing the law in the first place. And we were like, what, huh? We haven't done that? Then we realized that even though we had that evidence at home, we hadn't included it in our package of material. It kind of goes like this. On the day that they passed the pot laws in Canada, it was part of a thing called the Narcotics Act. And the entire debate about marijuana itself went something like this. One of the parliamentarians asks, "What is this cannabis sativa?" And another one answers, "It's a dangerous narcotic." And that's all the debate that happened about cannabis when they were pushing through the Narcotics Act. So if we'd included just that transcript of that, which we had at home, we would have overturned the marijuana laws. That judge said he would have decided in our favor and struck down the marijuana laws. Oh, we were just so pissed at ourselves. When I say we, I'm talking about my ex, Amy Von Stackelberg, who doesn't want me to mention her name in relation to marijuana activism, but fuck her, the papers already did. It's not like I can keep that information out of the hands of the public anyway. And she deserves some recognition for what she did, because Amy did a really fucking good job on putting that constitutional challenge package together. Like, Amy's absolutely outstanding at being a human being. She's just amazing in every way. Except in her, in her strange fascination with a fellow by the name of Greg Neat. It's like, what the fuck? What do you see in him? Anyway, Amy was really good at helping to fight the pot laws, and I really think that she deserves a big bravo for that. So here I am, babbling on now and reminiscing about my ex, which is something you guys probably don't need me to do. So we'll see how that goes, and whether or not anybody actually pays any attention to my thingy here, or whether or not it actually is whether or not this actually worked out. So hopefully this is my first weird podcast. We'll see how it goes. And thanks for watching if you did. I really appreciate it very much. Make sure that you donate to your local food bank, because there's a lot of fucking poor people out there, man. Talk to you later.